Welcome back to the Countdown with Dean Kirk, up to number 43 on this fancy playlist of August the 29th, 1987. A song that I've completely forgotten about. This song should have been a hit. At least a hit in England. I think it was commercial enough. It's hard. It's got a storming guitar interlude in this record. I think it had the potential, just commercial enough maybe to make it to the top 20, top 15 in the UK. Over here in the US, maybe not so much here in the US because punk didn't take off over here like it did in England. Punk really didn't start getting popular here until about the mid-90s with the advent of groups like Green Day. Although arguably the punk came from the U.S. because we had those groups back in the 60s like Talk Talk with the group the group Music Machine doing Talk Talk, and I guess Psychotic Reaction could be considered a little bit punk. But anyway, that's beside the point. The song I want to talk to you about, I know this is going to sound disjointed because my notes are all over the place on this record. The song at number 43, Icicle Works, Understanding Jane. Boy, I tell you, this got some monstrous guitar riffs in this record. I mean, skyscraper-sized, mountainous guitar riffs, just mounting on this, just supported by some great singing on this record by Ian McNabb. Now, Ian McNabb, when I listen to him sing on this record, and I guess you have to be really into music to know this, he reminds me, at least on this record, he reminds me a little bit of Charlie Sexton. Charlie Sexton had that hit. Nobody remembers the record. Hardly anybody remembers the record, but he had a record out, and Night Tracks played the heck out of the record called Beat So Lonely. That was in late 1985, early 86. And Ian McNabb, the lead singer of Icicle Works, his singing on this record, Understanding Jane, reminds me a little bit of Bruce Springsteen in there too. That's the thing about this record. It's definitely punk. You got the Sex Pistols. You've got the Clash DNA, the musical DNA worked into this record. Well represented in this record. But the group has been compared to Echo and the Bunnymen. Remember Echo and the Bunnymen? Got a song of theirs coming up too on the countdown later on, and been compared to Teardrops Explode. But this song right here, it's reminiscent. It's similar. It fits into the genre. The Alarm, remember The Alarm? Big Country, doing in a big country, and boy, that was just glaciated, mountainous guitar riffs in that record too. Boy, just a majestic record. And this Understanding Jane approaches the majestic level. And also they sound like, reminds me a little bit of Social Distortion and the Godfathers. Don't know if anybody remember the Godfathers. They had that song out called Birth, School, Work, and Death back in 1988. Got that blasting blitzkrieg of guitars just rolling right across seamlessly across the melody of this record. You just got to rock out to this thing. Understanding Jane. If this sort of music was a little bit more popular here in the States, this song would have had the potential of going top 10 on the modern rock charts here in the States. I don't know if they had the alternative charts back in the U.S. back in the day. But anyway, let's go into Icicle Works, Understanding Jane. I'll get into the album in just a minute. First off, this band formed in Liverpool back in 1980. They got their name. The name came from a science fiction story by Frederick Pohl called The Day the Icicle Works Closed. And that's how they got their name, Icicle Works. It's worth noting that after all this was over, the band was over, Ian McNabb and some of the other players, they pursued very prolific careers. Ian McNabb, he had a solo career, but he also played with the likes of Ringo Starr and Neil Young post Icicle Works. Now, early on, they released a CD. Well, not a CD. This was no CDs were coming out back in the 80s. Well, they put out a cassette of 6 songs, which sold gosh dog it, I had the number of copies that it sold. It was something like 900 copies, or maybe it was 9,000, but it was a considerable amount of copies that was sold at Liverpool's Pro Records, and that's where they came from, Liverpool. And they released their first single, their first charted single called Nirvana, went to number 15 on the indie charts in England, and then came their signature record. Boy, this was, oh man. Take me back, baby. Just take me back. Oh, boy, I know you're thinking, boy, this guy's dancing a fool. I know, but I just can't help it. Got to blow off a little steam, too. You see, Icicle works. Whisper to a Scream. Remember Whisper to a Scream? That's the first song I heard by Icicle Works. Night Tracks. WTBS, Night Tracks. Saw it on Night Tracks. Thank God for Night Tracks. Back in 1984. Started watching Night Tracks back in February, March of 1984. And I remember they were playing It's My Life by Talk Talk, The Ghost in You by the Psychedelic Furs, along with the top 40 stuff. And there was the, they just mixed it up so beautifully, the top 40, the R&B. They played a lot of black artists that you wouldn't hear on the pop radio stations. And they played the alternative, well, back then it was called New Wave. And they played Whisper to a Scream by Icicle Works. They pushed it. I think they might have had heavy rotation. But it was not embraced by radio here in the States. Not embraced like it should have been. At least not here in Alabama. Not the stations in Birmingham, that's for sure. The song only got as high as number 37. Whisper to a Scream. I believe the subtext to the song was Birds Fly or something like that. Whisper to a Scream. But the interesting thing about that record is you would think this record would have been top 10 in England. It was definitely a classic, a quintessential British New Wave record. You could have played this alongside, say, that band that Billy Idol was in, and my goodness, I can't even remember the name of the band that he was in. Generation X. You could play this next Generation X record. And but in England, the song only got as high as 52. Number 37 here in the States. At least it made top 40 here in the States, but only number 52 in England. But in 1983, a year before that, they had a song out called Love is a Wonderful Color, which went top 15 in Britain. Understanding Jane, the album was called If You Want to Defeat Your Enemy, Sing His Song. Came out back in 1987. All the songs written on this album, written by Ian McNabb. The album produced by Ian Brody, and I'll get to Ian Brody in just a minute. And actually, I'll probably could get into him right now. Ian Brody, boy, oh boy, formerly of the band, Ian Brody, who produced this album, If You Want to Defeat, who produced this record, Understanding Jane. He was in the band big in Japan, but he was the man. He was the person. Remember the Lightning Seeds? One man, the Lightning Seeds, had that song Pure in 1990. Then Life of Raleigh in 1992, although he started working with somebody else, Simon Rogers by then, and he picked up a touring band to back him up, and then he came out with You Showed Me, but he covered that Turtle song back in 1996. Boy, I get so excited talking about these. It's all pent up. Everything's just so pent up. But he produced this album, If You Want to Defeat Your Enemy, Sing a Song. Now, the drummer of this band, Icicle Works, Chris Sharrock, he joined the Laws. And then he joined the Lightning Seeds for a while. And he played with World Party. Remember the group World Party? I can't remember the song they did, but Night Tracks played one of their songs back in 1986-87. And then he later drummed for Robbie Williams, Delamentary. Remember Delamentary? The Eurythmics and Oasis. And recently, I didn't know this. Now, if you're from England, if you're watching this video in England, no doubt you probably heard the band called Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds. I believe that's the name of the band. I know they've been playing them a little bit on BBC Radio 2 over there in England. They might have had a few charted things in England, but Chris Sharrock played in that band at least by 2018. So now, here we go. We're at number 43, man, Understanding Jane. You know, here's the thing. Even though it's definitely got that punk matrix, it is enmeshed in punk. It's showing love. It's the heart and soul. It's got that heart pulsating punk. But I hear light shadows. I hear shadows in this record. Some of that foot-stomping rock and roll by people like George Thorogood, Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty. Just embedded in this record as well. Understanding Jane, it is a high voltage, high energy rock and roll record. So proud that I put it on my fantasy playlist. And it is on my fantasy playlist of August 29th, 1987, coming in at number 43, Icicle Works with Understanding Jane.